This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And you have landed on Creep Street, my friends.
Salutations, greetings, hello.
Welcome to the creepy cul-de-sac.
That's right, baby.
Oh, man. Of course, as always, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod. We're even on TikTok.
Yeah.
On Facebook, you can find a little forum where daily we like to interact with our listeners, post stories, memes, all that fun stuff. That is called Citizens of the Milky Way, a Creep Street fan page. Just find that and click the Let Me In button, and one of us will let you in.
That's correct.
And if once a week is not enough for you Creep Street fiends,
that's right.
Head on over to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast for all sorts of goodies. We just put up a bonus episode about leprechauns.
Yes, we did.
With a few extra ritual games that we didn't include on the mainline episode.
We also recently have posted our spoiler cast of the most recent Scream movie that came out, and we have our definitive ranking of all the Scream movies. We have all kinds of bonus content over there on Patreon.
Little something for the whole family over there.
That's right. And it starts at just $2 a month.
Ooh, you're damn right. We have 3 tiers, $2, $5, $10 each, with escalating rewards.
That is correct.
Go over and check that out at patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast. Boy, oh boy. Now, Maureen, we're giving them something a little strange today.
We are.
But this story is a banger.
Is an absolute bang-tastic story. That it is one that has been covered. It's been covered by some people, but not by a lot of people. It's not a huge story. So I kind of like doing these stories that aren't the big bangers. Don't get me wrong. I love the big bangers. Give me an H.H. Holmes episode any day. Don't get me wrong. However, this is fun. It's fun to give people the information and the story about something that you don't hear about every day. It's a little bit more niche.
Well, Maureen, we've tickled their taints long enough.
Come on.
What is today's episode?
Citizens, today we will be discussing the strange death of Zigmund Adamski.
Ooh, you feel that? Those are chills running up and down your spine.
Yes, this is a very, very bizarre case. A cold case, truly.
It's just so strange. Everything about this is fucking weird.
So weird. It doesn't add up.
It's in the same vein as like a Cindy James, Blair Adams, where nothing quite lines up as to why they ended up dead.
Right.
It's very weird, very unsettling.
Very unsettling and very weird. And it covers a lot of topics within the Creep Street universe. You know what I'm saying? Like, it offers, a strange death. UFOs are involved. True crime. This is technically true crime. I mean, it's just very interesting.
Right.
Our sources for this week, we have some great ones, folks. One is an article from BBC Inside Out titled Alien Abduction Claims in Yorkshire. We have an article from Mysterious Universe called The Mysterious Death of Zigmund Adamski by Brent Swanser. And we have The Strange Death of Zigmund Adamski at Bedtime Stories, which is a fantastic YouTube channel we recommend you check out. Zigmund Adamski was a Polish immigrant who moved to England in 1960. He moved to a quaint small town called Tingley, which is in Yorkshire, England. Shout out to our Yorkshire listeners. Shout out to our UK listeners in general.
Absolutely.
We're in your hood this week.
Absolutely.
Zigmund and his wife were apparently very well liked, and they were just normal people in the neighborhood. Everything seemed to change on June 6th. At this time, Zigmund was 56 years old, and this was the day before his goddaughter's wedding. And everyone in the family was very excited about this, including Zigmund. It was kind of a happy occasion, obviously, that everyone was looking forward to.
Right.
At about 3:30 that day, Zigmund went off to do some shopping in town just to prepare for the next day. So his neighbors said that he was in a completely normal mood.
Okay.
But strangely enough, he never returned back home that day. So as the day went on, his wife became very, very concerned because the store, or the market, was very close by. There was no reason for him to be gone this long. In the evening, she called the police to, report him missing. And they found out that he actually did indeed arrive at the store in Wakefield and that he did buy his groceries. And the person working at the grocery store said that he seemed to be in a happy mood and everything was normal. However, that was the last time anyone would ever see Zigmund alive.
Oh boy.
They did a full sweep of the area for days and nothing really turned up. They didn't know where to look. I mean, they looked everywhere in the area, but they didn't see anything. There were no clues. There was nothing.
So he clearly was not at the wedding.
Right. I don't know exactly what happened at the wedding, if they still had the wedding or I don't know, but he did not return to go to that wedding.
Right.
So he went missing on June 6th, but on June 11th, this is 1980, by the way, June 11th, 1980, a coal worker whose name was Trevor Parker was doing his rounds at the Tomlin coal yard, which is about 30 miles away from Tingley, which is where Zigmund was living. And on top of this 12-foot high heap of coal, he saw a man laying face up on top of this heap of coal. And he immediately could tell that this man was dead. He called the police, and it wasn't long before they were able to confirm that this was the body of Zigmund Adamski. So he was well dressed. He was in a suit. I don't know if that was the clothes he left to go shopping in. That I can't say.
Yeah.
But he was well dressed in a suit, but he wasn't wearing a shirt, and his wallet and watch were missing. And even though he was dressed in a nice suit, everything seemed to be put on kind of weird, like not quite right.
Right.
Like maybe like as if a child was putting clothes on him, or as if someone who didn't know really exactly how clothes would work were on. Like things were misbuttoned and things like that.
Or just simply someone trying to put clothes on a dead body
really quickly
in a
or
rush.
something.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, but it was all very weird. What's even weirder though was that there was no dust or markings or anything of the coal on Zigmund's body, which doesn't really make any sense because he would have to be dragged or lifted up to the top of this mound of coal.
Right.
And that would get him dirty. Coal just gets everywhere.
Just by the nature of coal.
Yeah. What is going on with this coal?
Right.
Because there also weren't footsteps around him either in the coal, which was very bizarre. And what's also strange was there was no real sign of physical injury to him, or that there was some kind of struggle. There was no defensive wounds. Were just no real wounds in general.
So there was no signs of a struggle.
Right, exactly. One of the officers even said that it looked like, and I quote, "He'd just gone into bed and was fast asleep." But there were a few marks on him, though, not from the coal, but they looked like these tiny burn marks on the back of his head, neck, and shoulders. And he had some minor scuffs on his palms, but it was never really determined what could have caused these minor injuries, or what appear to be minor injuries.
Right.
Who knows what these really are? What's even weirder about that still is that on these burns, there was this strange, like yellowish, gel-ish substance or ointment or salve on these tiny burn marks on him.
Right.
They did tests on this ointment, but the coroner said that he could not determine what kind of ointment this was, or whatever this was. Zigmund seemed to have been well fed up until the day he died, even though he was missing for 5 days. That's just one of the clues that makes you think he didn't die earlier and just was placed there. He must have died recently.
So he was fed.
Yes.
Wow.
And the police called to all sorts of hospitals around the area to see if maybe he had been checked in anywhere or something like that, and there was no sign of him. But there wasn't any sign either that he was just like homeless during this time, just wandering around.
Right.
You know, especially because he was wearing these clothes that were like still clean and looked nice and all of this stuff. So it's like, where had he been that he was still able to take care of himself, or someone is able to take care of his items and feed him, or I don't know.
Right, exactly.
But it wasn't long until the police constable Alan Godfrey pronounced that Zigmund had died of a heart attack. But this still didn't answer a lot of these like weird questions about Zigmund's body, and also where his body was found and how his body was found.
Exactly.
The coroner examination could not find an exact cause of death, so it was kind of forced to go with the heart attack theory. But what was determined was that Zigmund had died 1 day before his body was found, and that the burn marks probably happened 2 days before.
Okay. Would that indicate torture of some kind?
Maybe. Yeah, that's what...
Like cigarette burns or something?
Yeah, I don't think it didn't look like cigarette burns, but something like that.
Okay.
Possibly they thought maybe it was battery acid.
Interesting.
They didn't really know exactly what caused this, but so it is possible that this was a torture situation.
Okay.
Because even though these marks were small, doesn't mean that they weren't like super painful, you know?
Right.
People in the whole area
right,
were getting very concerned and were very weirded out by this, and there was a lot of speculation about what was actually going on. And it didn't take long for people to kind of start thinking of some not so normal ways, some maybe paranormal ways, some alien related ways, something like that.
Right.
Because there is a flap for UFO activity in, I believe you pronounce it Todmorden. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. So I'm sure it's something completely different than that, but anyway, and this area is right by where Zigmund disappeared and was found, so there is a flap in this area.
Okay.
In the area, as I said before. And in a very, very, very strange twist of fate, or extremely strange circumstance, this police officer, the police constable Alan Godfrey, who I mentioned before, he actually had his own UFO encounter in this same area.
Right.
And he had it a little 6 months after Zigmund's body was found. And the story is very interesting.
Okay.
In November of 1980, which was about 6 months after Zigmund, went missing, Alan Godfrey was on duty, and he was dispatched to investigate these very bizarre reports of this herd of cows appearing and disappearing.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and as he was on his way there to investigate the area to see if he could figure out what was going on with these cows, he thought he saw an overturned double-decker bus just a little bit ahead of him. And he thought it was a bus that was full of, like, people, the workers in the mines, like
right.
bringing them back and forth to the mines. So he's expecting to see this terrible car accident. So he goes up and he drives next to it and he slows down. And it's not long until he realizes that this isn't a double-decker bus, but really that this craft was hovering 5 feet above the ground.
Whoa.
He tried to call for backup, but both his personal and dash radios both were not working. So he noted the time, and he decided to try and sketch this craft, which only took him about, a minute or so.
Right, exactly.
Right. And by the time he looked back up, the craft was gone. Then he realized that his car wasn't where it was when he first started drawing the craft.
Ooh, okay.
His car was about a quarter mile ahead on the road, and that half an hour had gone by.
Hearing a lot of things we hear often.
How many times have we heard about this?
First thing, electronics and stuff not working, whether it's or just devices, whether it's a car or a radio or whatnot, they all stop working.
the lost time thing is pretty, we hear that a lot too. But what's wild is how did he move a quarter mile down the road without even realizing it?
Yes. So it's like, was he taken somewhere and dropped back off and not dropped back off in the exact same place? Was he maybe driving really slowly? I don't know.
Right.
But he noticed that his boots were split at the toe, as if he had been dragged on the ground. And on top of that, when the cattle, this herd of cows that were appearing and disappearing, when they finally were found, they were found on a rain-soaked field that only had a locked gate as a way in. And there were no hoof prints around the area as well.
So as if they didn't travel there by foot, by hoof.
By hoof.
They were brought there.
They weren't hoofing it, they were dropped.
They were dropped there.
They were dropping it like
and
it's
the
hot.
Cows were alive?
Yeah.
They were just great doing cow shit, but just in an area they shouldn't be, and they don't know how they fucking got there.
Right, exactly.
Wow. Was this the same cattle that had been reported that had gone like...
Yes. I don't know if he found the cattle or if someone else found the cattle, but the cattle were found, yes.
I see. Okay, very interesting.
Yeah. That's all he really remembered from his encounter, but he actually went under a hypnosis session, and what he said during his hypnosis session was very scary, and we're going to read some of it right now.
They're horrible. Small. 3 to 4 feet, like 5-year-old lads. There are 8 of them. He's touching me. He's feeling at my clothes. They have hands and heads like a lamp. They keep touching me. They're making noises. Joseph. I know him as Joseph. He has told me not to be frightened. They are robots. They're not human. They're robots. They're his. They are Joseph's robots. There's a bloody dog. It's horrible.
So very weird stuff there.
Interesting. And interesting, the robot thing.
Yeah, like what is that?
One theory is that what we know of as gray aliens, these stereotypical gray alien that you think of when you think of an extraterrestrial, are actually hybrid, whether half machine, half organic, things created by these extraterrestrials that are like probes. That they actually, there's some theories that maybe they don't actually have, that they're like these robots that are just more advanced than our robots and are maybe possibly part organic, that they send as like probes and whatnot.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that does go along with that theory.
Absolutely. Very spooky stuff.
So the fact that this police officer, Alan Godfrey, went through this makes me think that this was maybe something to do, Zigmund Adamski's death was also having to do with aliens. It does make sense to me. It seems interesting, and the fact that there was another encounter, only 6 months later. And I don't think that this man is lying. He said that he's like one of those people that wished that this never happened to him. Like he's not into it. He's not into the fact that he had an alien encounter.
Exactly.
But let's talk a little bit about what maybe could have happened if it wasn't that.
Right. Well, first, there's something I want to talk about. You touched on it.
Let's talk about it.
How he's found at the top of this pile of coal.
Yeah.
And how tall did they say this hill of coal was?
I think it was like 12 feet tall or something.
Yeah. I've been, growing up, when I was young, my dad used to be a construction worker. Mm-hmm. And he's not now, but when I was little, and every now and then they would do a bring your child to work day.
Right.
Now, they didn't really deal with coal. They dealt with like gravel, asphalt, various other things, cement, And I remember at the construction yard, there would be these huge little mini mountains, some like 20 feet tall, 30 feet tall, of like loose gravel or things, and then when they need gravel, they scoop some up, load it in the back of a truck, take it where they got to go. Things like that.
Yeah.
Now, granted, this is a little bit different, but yeah, I remember when I was a kid, it was kind of dangerous. I remember I used to like trying to climb these hills and stuff. Right. Now, what you said was he's at the top of this little hill of coal, but there was no signs indicating he or someone had walked him up there to place him there. It's like a cherry getting put on top of a sundae.
Yeah.
The cherry didn't have to climb up the side of the ice cream because you put it on there. That's what it feels like. It feels like he was dropped from a
almost like a crane.
Like a crane would have picked him up, or a helicopter hovered over and just let him down on the thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, that's strange.
Oh, it's so strange.
And apparently the guy who was working that day that found him, what was it, like Trevor or Travis or something like that? Well, the guy who found him had been working there all day and had even driven by that and walked by that particular hill of coal, and he wasn't there. So this happened in a relatively short amount of time.
Totally.
And there would have been at least a few people around. And there was no sign that he had wallowed in this coal.
Right.
Because it wasn't all over him. Mm-hmm. That's what's strange. It was this, he got plopped down on top of it from above.
Right. How could that happen? I mean, it like screams alien to me.
Right, naturally, because we think of UFO extra as coming from above.
Right.
You know, so it's just naturally our brains put that on that. But what else could it be? What do you think? What else? What are some of the other theories besides extraterrestrials?
Well, the thing is, the other theory that we have here today, it still doesn't answer a lot of our questions.
Right.
Like, it doesn't answer how that happened. That's one of those things that is just so bizarre, and there isn't really an explanation for how he was able to be placed there with no one seeing in the middle of the day and all of this. You know what I mean? Like, It just doesn't make any, and without there being any coal disturbed and with there not being any coal on him, that's one of the things that just makes this story so mysterious.
Right.
That I can't speak for, but there is another theory about what possibly could have happened to Zigmund Adamski.
Because he clearly could have also just been killed by human people, but like, how do they get
Exactly, but how do they do that? Right.
Right. The mystery is who and why.
Right.
But there's also this other mystery of how.
Right. Exactly.
It's not like an unsolved murder where someone got stabbed and they don't know who did it. Mm-hmm. This is like a how did they actually fucking do it? And the coroner's report said it, if anything, it was like a heart attack. It was something natural within his own body. It wasn't, unless it was caused by stress or something. But,
right, exactly. So there was some evidence that was found by John Hansen and David Sankey, who are from BUFORA, which is the British UFO Research Association. And they realized that Zigmund Adamski might have not actually been looking forward to this wedding as much as we thought.
Okay.
Apparently there was like a family feud going on with someone in the family. Something with a cousin and her cousin's husband, or his cousin's husband. So it's possible that someone in the family could have abducted Zigmund, tortured him, which would explain the burns. And then after he unexpectedly died of this heart attack, they kind of panic and they just dump him on this coal.
Well, my thing is, what was their plan if he didn't die?
Exactly. That's what I feel like. I'm like, what do you mean? Just because
he died,
it was
and
a
they
family
panicked?
feud.
Like, if you torture, that's...
And like, why are you torturing them?
Is bad, if not worse, than killing someone in some ways.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what? Yeah. Like, why would they have suddenly panicked because he died? Like, if he was still fucking alive to tell about it, I would be worried about that too. Yeah, but then you got to consider, how did they get him? Unless they were able to whip out a crane while there's people working.
Yeah.
And put him up there. You know what I mean?
Right. It just doesn't make any sense. There's just so much that just does not add up.
And also his apparel. There's nothing, I'm assuming there's nothing in your sources that said he went to get groceries in a suit.
Nothing explicitly said that, but it is kind of like implied that is what he left wearing, but I never, in none of my sources, it really clarified that. So I'm not, I think that's what he left to go shopping in, but I don't know.
And then also, what is this mysterious substance, this salve? Was this something he or someone put on it to treat the little burns?
Right. They sent out this salve to the lab, and the lab couldn't determine what it was.
Right. You'd think if it was your typical...
It's not just like
pharmaceutical ointment.
Vaseline.
Right.
So that's very strange. Also, the fact that he wasn't wearing a shirt and his wallet and watch were missing.
Because that sounds more like your typical just crime.
Right, like a robbery with the wallet and watch.
He got robbed, wallet, watch, all this stuff. Yeah.
But he didn't appear to be like mugged or anything like that.
Right. And there appeared to be no struggle. So that's what's so strange is there's no explanation that 100% explains this.
No, yeah.
It's like Blair Adams, Cindy James, where there's no one theory 100% covers all the bases.
Right.
Wow. And like, why was the shirt gone but the suit's still there? You know what I mean? You would think...
No, yeah, I know. I was just going to bring that up too. Like, I don't understand that.
Yeah, absolutely bizarre.
Yeah.
And did he work? He worked at this...
Yeah, he was a coal miner.
He was a coal miner, okay. So this happened in 1980.
Yeah.
And this is relatively recently. So he moved, apparently, you said, in 1960. So he had been there a while.
Right. He had been there for, 20 years.
20 years. Okay. Wow.
So yeah, this is just one of those really bizarre, weird mysteries. And if you guys have any theories or if you've heard about this and you have thoughts or you know anything, please let us know. Reach out to us and keep us updated because, I don't know, this is a weird one.
And this policeman's UFO story happened like about a week after?
6 months after.
Or 6 months after.
Yeah.
And he was the police officer who found or like investigated the Zigmund?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then before that, had he had any experience with UFOs? So this
No.
is something that came to him after he had this run-in.
Yeah. He had never had any experiences before then.
Fascinating.
Isn't that so weird?
Absolutely fascinating. Maureen, thank you. Thank you
God.
so much.
Of course, my pleasure.
Creep Street, as I said, short but sweet. We were about to take off on a little vacay, but we wanted to give you a little something before we headed out.
Yeah. But before we go, Dylan, will you please do me the honor of listing off our top-tier Patreon donors?
It would be my absolute pleasure. Of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finnish Face Via Lundqvist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the Oh So Suave Sean Richardson, the British Bone Breaker Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the Killer Stud Carl Staub, the Firestarter Heather Carter, the Conqueror Christopher Damian Damaris, the Awfully Awesome Annie, the Murderous Maggie Leach, the Sir of Sexy Sam Hackworth, the Evil Elizabeth Riley, and Lauren Hellfire Hernandez Lopez.
Wow, I love listening to those names. It's my fucking favorite. And I must thank you, Dylan.
Yes. And just wanted to give a little shout out to one of our own patrons, the Loathsome Johnny Love.
Yes.
I have the absolute pleasure of working with him on Second Cities Touring Company. He has got some new music coming out. He just did an interview on NPR.
Oh, hell yeah.
I need to get a little more info about it and everything because I told him I'd love to share just like a clip of one of his new tracks.
Yeah, we'll
on
get
the
that.
episode
We'll
and
get that
everything.
going.
But yes, check out the music of John Love. It's on Spotify and I believe other outlets as well. And I think that new album's going to be coming soon. So everyone check that out. Our own Loathsome Johnny Love.
Yes, please. We love you.
All right. Of course, like, rate, subscribe, tell friends, family, loved ones. Convert the uninitiated.
Yes, please. Your support means the world to us. It truly does. And we owe so much to our Creep Street, to our citizens of
That's
the Milky
right.
Way. And yes, please evangelize, let the people know, share us on Instagram, on social media, anything like that. It really does make a huge difference.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.